I've been living abroad for over 14 years now. I left the United States in 2010, and I'm starting my 15 years abroad, and I wanted to talk about 5 myths that I no longer believe about the United States that are pretty common and you kind of grow up with when you're indoctrinated in the United States. And when I say indoctrinated, I mean that. You're taught a certain way to look at the world. And this is in every country. Every country teaches its citizens to think and behave in a certain way. And there's 5 big myths in my mind that the United States really pushes. So let's jump in with the first one, which is freedom. So this is probably one of the biggest ones that you hear in the United States is it's the land of the free and the home of the brave. And freedom, 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 freedom. You're free in the United States. You have the freedom to do and say what you want. The freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of, democracy, so to say, to vote for your leaders. And although you have those freedoms, the myth is that the rest of the world doesn't. And so the United States pushes this idea that they are the only country that allows freedom. And when you live abroad and when you travel, you'll find that freedom is pretty much everywhere. There are a handful of countries that are very repressive and actually control their population in a very aggressive way. But most countries throughout the world are actually pretty free. And this is a myth that the United States kind of pushes, that they are the only country that has true freedom because they have the right to bear arms and because they have the freedom of the press and freedom of assembly and freedom of religion. But they are not the only country that has these. And so this is why it's a very big myth that the United States kind of pushes in the media, and it's just not true. There are other countries, especially throughout Europe, that have democracies that allow for freedom of speech, that allow for freedom of religion, and freedom of assembly and protest. So it's not an American-centric thing, and that's one of the big myths that I no longer believe, that the United States is the only free country in the world, because it's not true. Following up, the next point is democracy. So the United States pushes this idea that democracy is the only form of government that is legitimate, and they push the idea that America's democracy is kind of the only true democracy, which in reality, that's not true. There are plenty of other countries that have functioning democracies, from Asia to Europe to South America to Africa. Pretty much everywhere there are functioning democracies, and functioning to a different level. And the United States claims to be kind of at the top, when in reality, it's a failed democracy. You can see this in the elections every 4 years. You can see how the government no longer works for the people. I think that the biggest myth that the United States pushes out about democracy is that, one, it's the only legitimate form of government, and two, that they have a democracy. Because after living abroad for a long time and watching and learning about other countries and other cultures and other ways of doing things, it looks to me like the United States does not have a functioning democracy. They have essentially a fake democracy, and it's designed to keep people in line more than anything else. Sure, you can vote for your candidate every 4 years, but that guy, whoever is elected, doesn't really change anything, because the real power lies in the money, and the United States is run by an oligarchy of very powerful, rich companies and conglomerates that often change the rules and the laws in order to favor their businesses and their profitability. So the United States on the surface has a democracy, and people will go and vote every election. And they'll make a big deal out of it with the media and say this is the end of If you don't vote, this could be the end of the democracy. And they get people very riled up about it. But in the end, the results don't actually matter because the people that control the United States do it behind the scenes. And there's been reports about public opinion and whether or not public opinion actually changes the laws in the United States. And it turns out that public opinion does not affect what laws are enacted, which shows that the American people don't actually have any real power in the government. So it's all a facade to keep people wrapped up in this illusion of democracy and change, when in reality, it doesn't matter. So the next one on the list is capitalism. I'm not a communist or a socialist, so don't kill me in the comments. I think capitalism is good, and I think it's important, and I think it has actually brought a lot of people out of poverty, created a lot of invention, and I think free business is important. But the United States, like with most things, tries to take it to the extreme. Capitalism is good if it's a well-regulated system. And the United States tries to push it to the extreme and tries to, again, these corporations that actually control the government try to deregulate as much as possible. And every time we've seen this happen, when the regulations are stripped away and there's nothing controlling the capitalists, so to say, they end up destroying the system. They end up destroying the markets. This happened in the Great Depression in the 1920s. 1929, stock market was unregulated capitalism. Everybody was speculating what was, going to go up next. Everybody was trying to make money. It's happened. Pretty much every financial crisis has happened because of deregulation. And this happened in 2007 and 2008. During that financial crisis was unregulated financial services that caused the system to collapse, all in the pursuit of profit. And so capitalism is great, but it needs to be regulated and it needs to be controlled. And the United States pushes this idea or this myth that capitalism is the best system in the world and it should be unregulated, and that you should have free markets everywhere. And they even push this in their foreign policy, that capitalism is the best. And they present this idea that the United States wants free and fair markets. But in reality, they are rigging the system in order to benefit the United States. And they don't actually want free markets. They want protected markets internationally, and they want unregulated markets domestically in order to maximize profit. And so this idea that capitalism is the best system in the world and unregulated capitalism is even better is one of the myths I no longer believe, because you can look at other systems around the world and see when things are well regulated, how a country can function better. They can better use their tax money, and how they can better provide for their citizens in the workers. Because when you have unregulated capitalism, the people that get screwed over are almost always the employees, because they'll take everything in order to give you the least amount of wages and the least amount of benefits. And so this idea that unregulated capitalism is great is actually a myth that is proven to not be true. But the United States still pushes this myth, and people still believe it, especially in the United States. So the next one is about the United States being the good guys. The United States has pretty much throughout its existence portrayed itself as the good guys, especially in foreign affairs. Because of the way the media is controlled in the United States, it is very easy for them to manipulate the conversation in order for the United States to look like the good guys when it comes to international conflicts, specifically conflicts. And it's just not true. The United States history is full of interventionism that led to worse situations and worse outcomes for those countries, but better outcomes for the United States. There's examples of military coups backed by the United States in order to allow businesses to reap the benefits of, the resources of that country. So we have backed dictators, we have backed all kinds of rogue factions within governments to destabilize and to install puppet governments that are subservient to the United States, and specifically the United States business interests, not even the United States government, but more business interests. But we have done it under the guise of democracy and freedom, that we need to bring democracy and freedom to countries that never wanted it or need it, essentially. Operation Iraqi Freedom was one of the big ones when I was, growing up after 9/11. We had to go into Iraq to free the Iraqis from Saddam Hussein. And in the end, all we did was make everything worse in that country. We ended up killing millions of Iraqis, and for very little gain for the United States or for the Iraqi people. We were supposed to bring them democracy, we were supposed to bring them freedom, and in the end, it's just a bit of a sham. Same in Afghanistan. We went into Afghanistan and we said, we were going to liberate the people of Afghanistan. We were going to give them education. The women were going to be able to vote and go to schools and yada, 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 yada. And for 20-some years we were there, only to pull out, and it's right back into the Taliban's hands. And everything that we were trying to accomplish, which we weren't really trying to accomplish, is back to what it was before we were even there. And the United States will often go in with ulterior motives, but in order to sell it to the American people, they talk about, we need to bring them freedom, we need to bring them democracy, we need to help the poor people of Vietnam, we need to help the poor people of Korea, we need to help the poor people of Iraq or Afghanistan or Ukraine or any other conflict that we are getting involved in, while in reality, we often created that conflict in order to benefit in some way. So the idea that the American people and the American military are the good guys are pretty much a myth that is pushed within the United States. But as soon as you start traveling around the world, you'll realize that the American military has been there before you, and they were not welcomed most of the time. Even in the First and Second World War, American companies were selling to both sides until it became no longer profitable or reasonable to sell to both sides. So the American myth that the American military and the American the American military are the good guys is exactly that. It's a myth. Go travel in other parts of the world and ask them what they feel about the American military, and you'll get a very eye-opening response if you don't already know that the American military is not perceived as the good guys. And that brings us to our very last myth, which is American exceptionalism. And this is the idea or the concept that America is exceptional in everything it does. And it's, I guess, arrogance and ignorance. Arrogance in the sense that they think America is better at everything, just that's what it is, exceptionalism. They think that America is exceptional, and that goes from the military to its republic and democracy, to its economy, to its education, to everything, right? They're exceptional at everything that they do. And it's just not true. There are ways to measure things like healthcare and the outcomes. There are ways to measure things like education and the outcomes. There's many ways that you can measure things to compare countries. And the United States is not number one in most things. Sure, top 20, which is still really good. But the idea that America is the best at everything leads to a lot of ignorance. One, because if you think you're the best at everything, you'll never go to another country and learn that they are actually doing something better. Because you'll never think that anybody can do anything better. That's the exceptionalism, which borderlines on racism a little bit because you think, oh, as an American, I'm better than everybody, which can lead quickly into racism. But racism is a different topic for a different video. These are the 5 things that I no longer believe, the 5 myths that many Americans believe that I no longer believe after living abroad for many, many, many years. And what do you guys think? Are these the big ones? Did I miss anything? I'm sure there's 20, 30. I could do a video that's 3 hours. But I'm going to stop there. These are the 5 that I think are really big. And those are democracy, freedom, capitalism, Americans are the good guys, and American exceptionalism. These 5 things I think are kind of what shape a lot of Americans' core views of the world. And it's just a myth. It's propaganda that's fed to the American people at a young age, all the way through their lives, actually, in order to, again, create people that are very patriotic and think that they are the best in the world and at everything they do, when in reality, the United States is not number 1. So leave a comment. Do you agree with these? Did I miss some that you think should be added to this list? And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see how my views have changed over the years after living abroad, I have a much more in-depth video that you can click on here and see how my views have changed over the years. I hope you liked this video, and see you in the next one.